as I mentioned, now we're starting to speak about what's the forbidden labors on Shabbos. We mentioned previously in different earlier classes that Shabbos is a day of rest. We should look at the fact that we have these different the laws of not working on Shabbos. It brings a beauty to Shabbos. The fact that we're able to rest and it allows us to receive the specialty that there is of the day of Shabbos. That we're able to, because we're resting, we're able to spend our time enjoying Shabbos. So to share a story about the importance of keeping the laws of Shabbos, there was a rabbi who lived in the city of Jerusalem not that long ago, maybe about 50 years ago. His name was Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. Very religious Jew. And he got invited one Shabbos meal to a wealthy man that lived to a wealthy family that lived in his neighborhood. He went over and had a Shabbos meal by their home. And during the course of the Shabbos meal, the child of the host did something that was forbidden to do on Shabbos. So the rabbi that's a guest at the Shabbos meal screams out, "It's Shabbos!" He screams out to let the kid know that it's Shabbos. You can't do this. The host tells the rabbi, why are you making such a big deal? He's only a kid. So the meal continues, and later during the meal, the host tells his son, "Can you bring some nice shot glasses to the table?" That he had a nice alcoholic beverages, and he wanted to have it in these nice shot glasses. So he sends his son to go get the shot glasses. While his son is bringing back the shot glasses, one of the shot glasses breaks, and instantly the host screams out to his son, "Oh boy, and he screams out, "Why did you break the glass? Why did you break the shot glass?" As Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld is seeing this, he tells the host, "Look, we both have things that we instantly scream out about. For me, it was the fact that I saw a kid not observing Shabbos, doing something that wasn't observing Shabbos. For you, it was seeing your son ruin a shot glass that you had." So I think that the story, why I'm bringing in the story, is that we could look at and see that we want to make it important to us, the idea of keeping Shabbos. Now there's different levels, and it's not either you keep Shabbos, you observe Shabbos completely, or you don't observe Shabbos at all. For one person, it could be that to accept everything would be too much, right? At this moment, so they only want to take on certain things right now. So that could be for one person. For another person, it could be that they already feel that they observe Shabbos, but there's certain things that whatever they know they observe, but there's new things, there's things that they are unaware of, and through learning the laws of Shabbos, they'll be able to know more about what is permitted and what is forbidden to do on Shabbos. So that's just a little introduction to now talking about the laws of the forbidden labors on Shabbos. So halacha, now let's learn chapter 80, halacha 1. Now, introduction to halacha 1. In halacha 1, we'll talk about the forbidden labor of making a fire, of having a fire, of the Hebrew word is mavir, which is making a fire. Does anyone want to share any thoughts of what they think are just the general a general idea of what would be what is this forbidden labor? When is it? What are the different ways that it could be a forbidden labor?
On Shabbos or Yom Tov?
Everyone's be.
So let's speak about Shabbos. There's a good point. Yontif is different. Yontif is more lenient. But let's talk about Shabbos.
Well, Shabbos was after Hashem finished creating, and writing and lighting a fire and certain other things are building something are creating. So you shouldn't create. Hashem didn't create.
Good point. Yeah. So you're saying creating a fire is forbidden. What about, is it only creating a fire forbidden, or other ways of or there's more that could be included in this forbidden labor of a fire?
Well, I widened it to creating anything, writing a new document.
Well, how do you define
Okay, so
fire? Is it creating energy? I mean, you shouldn't open the refrigerator.
That's a very good
for the light
question.
to go on.
That's a very good question. We're going to talk about that. Yeah. So is it only to fire, or is it a heat element?
My understanding is that electricity is considered a form of fire, and that's why you don't want to turn on a light when you open the refrigerator. And my understanding is one may not light a fire or turn off a fire or change the fire during Shabbat.
Yes, you can't. Very good, Thomas. You're not allowed to light a fire or change a fire, add to a fire, or cause something to add to a fire. For instance, putting fuel, even though you're not, that's going to cause the fire to get bigger, that will be forbidden. Or putting wood into existing fire would be forbidden.
Or
As
fanning
someone
a fire.
mentioned on Yontif, fanning a fire to make it a bit larger. Yeah. On Yontif, it's a little different. It's different. You're able to, if there's an existing fire, you're able to you're able to light a fire when there's already an existing fire.
I mean, stoke it, keep it going.
But
right?
Shabbos, that would be forbidden. What?
I mean, stoke it, keep it going, continuing the energy. The flow.
This is on Yontif, you're able to, let's say if you have an existing fire, you're able to light something else on fire.
You can transfer a fire.
Transfer the fire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, from the source,
But
you
that's
can then use
exclusively
that
the Yontif.
light for something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as there's a need for there, it's a little more complex. There has to be a need for it. But let's go back to about Shabbos.
Okay.
So that's just the general idea of the malacha, the forbidden labor of mavra, fire, making a fire. Now we'll learn inside a halacha, and then we'll talk about some practical implications of this halacha. It is forbidden to use the light of a candle, the flame of a candle, for something that it's necessary to look a little closely at it. And according to the Alter Rebbe, it's specifically if you have to look very closely at it, then it'll be forbidden. The Gozru Rabbanan Shema Yishkach B'Yater Lekarev as a Shemen Elapsila. Because the rabbis made a decree that maybe one is going to forget that it's Shabbos, and he'll tilt the candle to bring the oil closer to the wick. The Yischayv Mishum Mavir, and then he'll be obligated for doing the forbidden labor of making a fire. And we see in this case, you're not creating a fire, but you're just causing the fire to be better, to be larger, so that you could see what you're examining better. So you're able to see what you're examining. Ushnayim mutar likres b'teif sefer echad b'inyan echad. When you have two people that are reading from one book and they're reading from the same concept, then they're able to examine closely near a candle. Because if one's going to come and is almost going to tilt the candle, the other person that's with him will remind him that you can't do this on Shabbos. And by our candles that they're made out of fat or out of wax, and the wax or the fat is wrapped around the wick, the custom is to allow a person to read closely or examine something near the candle. However, it's necessary to make a certain reminder that you won't come to cut the top part of the wick, which that top part became into ashes. The Alter Rebbe doesn't mention this point, that it's necessary to make a reminder that you won't cut the top of the wick. Rather, he just mentions that you're able to, when you have a candle that's made out of wax or fat, and then you're able to examine something next to it. According to the Rambam, if you would cut off the top of the wick, it would be forbidden according to the Torah. That even having a Gentile cutting off the top of the wick would be forbidden. Just a point to clarify. We spoke about this earlier in different classes, but to clarify, there's certain things that are forbidden to do on Shabbos biblically, and there are other things that are forbidden to do on Shabbos only rabbinically. And we wanted to mention when is it forbidden biblically and when is it forbidden rabbinically, because when there's a time of need, there could be certain situations. It's not simple, but there could be situations that it could be permissible if something's only forbidden rabbinically. Okay, now let's speak about some practical cases. We talked about our source of light doesn't come from candles nowadays. We have light bulbs. Turn on the light. So the light switch and the light, how do we have light? There's a light bulb, and you turn on the light switch, and then it lights up the room. So what is the law about a light bulb? So to read or to examine anything near a light bulb is permitted, since we're not worried that you're going to tilt the light bulb. It's not going to cause, by examining near it, there's no concern that you might come to do a forbidden labor. Now, light bulbs themselves, you're not allowed to turn them, if you're not allowed to turn on the lights on Shabbos. What's the reason why you can't turn on lights on Shabbos? But those, so it's a little complicated. Depends on what type of light bulb it is. Is there a source of heat in the light bulb? Or is there not a source of heat? But either way, it would be forbidden. The question is it going to be forbidden because of the forbidden labor of making a fire? Or is it forbidden because you're creating something like, forgot who mentioned. Someone mentioned that there's, I think, who was it? I forgot who mentioned. Someone mentioned that it's forbidden to create things on Shabbos.
That was me, Will.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, yeah. So it's forbidden to even create things. So turning on the light wouldn't be forbidden because you're making a fire, but it would just, if there's no, let's say by LED lights, LED lights, there's not a, from my understanding, there's not a source of heat in them, but it would still be forbidden because you're creating something. So that would be, but it would only be forbidden rabbinically.
What does that mean, only forbidden rabbinically? What's that definition? Because of the rabbis? Tell me what that means.
So the Torah says that we shouldn't work on Shabbos.
Correct.
What is considered, what does the Torah mean when it says we shouldn't work on Shabbos? So the section that it tells us that you can't do work on Shabbos is near the section of the Torah that it speaks about building the tabernacle. So we learn from the fact that the section of the Torah, the verse in the Torah that tells us that you can't do work on Shabbos is right near the verse that tells us that you have to build a tabernacle, that all the tasks that were necessary to build the tabernacle, they are all forbidden to do on Shabbos, and we push off the building of the tabernacle when it comes to the day of Shabbos. In the desert, they'd have to build a tabernacle, but they wouldn't be able to build it on Shabbos. That's from the fact that the verse is right near it. The verse that tells us you can't do work on Shabbos is right near the verse that tells us to build the tabernacle. We learn that you can't build the tabernacle on Shabbos. So in the oral Torah, it goes on to list what are the works, what different tasks are involved in building the tabernacle. And there are 39 tasks. So these 39 tasks are forbidden according to the Torah. Now, it's not limited only to these 39 tasks. If something is very similar, it will be included in that forbidden labor. For instance, I'll take the example of cooking. In the tabernacle, they would cook the dye to make the curtains. So that labor, they did that task of cooking the dye. Now, since baking is a very similar task, that's also forbidden according to the Torah. Then when is it forbidden according to the rabbis? That's if the rabbis felt this is similar to what is forbidden according to the Torah. Or it could lead a person to do what is forbidden according to the Torah. So that's in short, that's in short the idea of what is forbidden according to the Torah and what's forbidden rabbinically.
Okay, thank you.
What else? Let's see what else we could discuss. So that's about light bulbs. Light bulbs it's forbidden to turn on the light on Shabbos. Now, let's just take it a more general step. Electricity in general is forbidden on Shabbos. Anything that runs on electricity would be forbidden on Shabbos due to the concept of creating something. That's forbidden to create something. And that's a rabbinical decree that it's not one of the tasks that they did in the tabernacle, but the rabbis felt this is something that they should forbid, because the idea of all it's learned in the oral Torah, the idea of all the tasks, the idea of all the tasks is that something gets changed when all the tasks cause a change. It's interesting that what makes something forbidden on Shabbos or permissible is not if it's hard labor or it's not hard labor. For instance, if a person carries chairs, that could be more labor, that could be hard, that could cause more labor than just turning a light switch. But still, turning a light switch is something that's forbidden. And carrying chairs is not necessarily is not forbidden. Or carrying books. The reason is that what the common denominator by all the tasks are that that something gets changed. Like we're speaking about fire. Beforehand, there wasn't a fire, and now you changed that you made a fire. So the rabbis felt that something that is creating something has that idea of the forbidden labors, of what's forbidden to do on Shabbos. The idea of changing something. So by electricity, there's change happening. They felt that that's forbidden. They made it forbidden. Another example of making a fire is gas. So cars that run on gas, I know nowadays there's hybrid cars, but if the car's made out of gas, there's going to be a problem of doing the forbidden labor of making a fire. Driving cars are forbidden for different there's different forbidden tasks as well, but I'm just mentioning that there's also, if it's a gas car, there's also the forbidden labor of making a fire. Someone mentioned a refrigerator. So a refrigerator, if there's a light, you have to be careful. You have to remove the light turn off the light before Shabbos. You have to remove the light before Shabbos so that when you open the refrigerator, you're not causing the light to turn on and off. Examples of things you should be careful for with electricity. There are plenty. I'm just going to mention some of them. Walking through an electric door. To go into a complex, you have to pass through an electric door. You have to be careful with that. If it's necessary to go through a opening door, a door that opens, automatic door, you should wait for someone else to walk by so that it's opening already for a non-Jew, and then you're just going in as well. Telephones, microphones, elevators, doorbells, censored lights, and things that run on batteries. Those are some examples of the things that are forbidden to use on Shabbos.
Except if you have a Shabbos elevator, right? Because it's already been preset.
Right. So Shabbos elevator, yeah. There's different the Shabbos elevator is not gonna make it a way that it will be permissible, but you have to be. I would suggest asking asking a rabbi, consulting a rabbi before, if you know beforehand, to ask a rabbi beforehand, since sometimes they set up the elevator. There's two modes that you could set up an elevator, and one I think is permissible, one is forbidden. Two modes that could be like automatic elevator. So
Rabbi
maybe the
Yessi,
rabbi could yeah.
I was going to answer Robert. I think that it has to do with, does the amount of electricity, is it in proportion to the number of people there? Is it in proportion to the amount of weight? If it's a set amount of power that goes into the elevator, move up and down, regardless if there's 0 people or 10 people in the elevator, that's one thing. But if the electricity,
Right.
The power is adjusted according to the number of people, that's a problem. If it's a preset, but that's yeah. The other thing is that going through the door, even though everything may be kosher, if you got the beam and you're breaking the beam when you're going through the door, in or out, that's another problem.
Thanks, David. My experience has been that in the buildings I go to, all of the floors have already been turned on to stop on every floor, so there's nothing that is creating any energy.
Okay. Just give me a sec.
I've experienced something like that in a hospital where there was a Shabbos elevator set to stop at every floor at predetermined times.
Yeah.
A what?
Okay, let's move on.
Ask him. Excuse me.
Yeah.
My husband wants to know about a Shabbos scooter. A Shabbos scooter. I'm not sure what he means, but I'm assuming it's advertised on Yeshiva World.
I haven't heard about it. I'll try to look into it.
Okay.
It's a scooter that has a grandma switch, in which
Has a what switch?
Has a grandma switch. Basically, what happens is that when you turn it on, it doesn't automatically react to your turning it on. There's a period of time in which the system waits before it then turns on the electricity. So for all intents and purposes, you have not turned on the machine. All that has happened is that the machine turns itself on after a preset amount of time. And so there's always a wait time between any action that you do and what the scooter itself will do. This is something that was created in Israel a while, I don't know, a few years back. And you'll find that several of them have appeared in the neighborhood, in the North Miami Beach neighborhood. And all of them have to have the proper hashgacha to be able to be used. It's not, you can take any electric scooter and use it. It's already been rabbinically evaluated by there's an institute in Israel that looks at those kind of things, and they were the ones who have who provide the proper certification so that it can be used.
Are you saying
very interesting? So it seems.
Excuse me. Are you Ezra? Are you saying that as long as there's some waiting time between your action and the machine's action, that makes it permitted?
It's probably a lot more than that. Okay. So I'm sure that, if I forget what the name of the institute is that handles the halachic aspects of electricity. I don't know if you can go on there and read up about it. but there are, I mean, look up kosher electric scooters
Okay.
and find out what the requirements are and how it works. And, you'll get the gist of how, what actually happens. But the
It
ones that I
doesn't
have,
carry over then to, I organize my house so that if I do something, a certain amount of time goes by before the something gets done. That doesn't get picked up in this analysis, does it?
it may or may not. That's the reason
Okay.
why I say you need to go and find out how it actually works.
Okay, I'll
No,
look into it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah,
can I ask a question? There's probably a merit associated with this too, because you go into a shul, Beit Knesset, you're driving on Shabbat, and you go
No.
in there, they're going to assume that you're mahalo.
There's no assumption, because most of the people know who have problems, for example, walking, and need to use these kind of things. So it's not like, and they also know that people who have those kind of things have the proper certification, and the equipment has the proper certification to be used. It's not like, you can take any scooter and stam, get a certification. It has to be done in a particular way.
I see. Okay, thank you.
okay, let's move on to the second halacha. This halacha has to do also with if a person lights their menorah near their Hanukkah menorah near a door, are they able to open up the door while the menorah is being lit? Let's see. Also, liftayach deles eichaloin neged ner doiluk. It is forbidden to open a door or a window near a candle that is burning. When it's close to when the door or window is very close to the burning candle. The reason for this is because shema yichbe ayidezeh. Maybe the burning candle will get extinguished through opening the door or the window.
Right.
But it's permissible to close the door or to close the window, although it could change the fire, the burning candle. If you close the window or close the door, it could burn better or burn less. The reason why it's permissible is because you're not directly causing the fire to change. All what you're doing is you're stopping outside force from affecting the fire. The wind that's outside could cause the fire to burn, to have a bigger flame. Now, when you close the door, you're not affecting the fire. That's just causing something that's external to not affect the fire. Now, when is it they have to be worried about opening up the door? That if you open it's forbidden to open the door if it's or a window opposite a burning fire. That's if a regular wind can cause the fire to get extinguished. If a regular wind can't cause the fire to get extinguished, then it will be permitted to open up the door, and you don't have to be worried that maybe there's going to be an unusual wind that will extinguish the fire. Upesach hataner sheish by eish, aser bein liftayach bein lisker ki aidei zeh hu maver oy mechabe. So a door to an oven, that there's a fire in the oven, it's forbidden to open the oven or to close the oven, because through opening or closing the oven, you're going to cause the fire to burn greater, or to be somewhat extinguished or entirely extinguished. So nowadays so our ovens, or also by our refrigerators, that our refrigerators that have a thermostat, this is also similar idea that when you open it could cause a change. But to an oven, if the oven's on, you should try to avoid closing it. We mentioned in an earlier class. Regards to refrigerator, most people are lenient and allow opening a refrigerator and closing a refrigerator. Just like opening the door to your house could cause the change of the heat, the temperature in your house.
Oh, that's right.
But most people are lenient and that it's not, and allow opening up the door to your house or opening up the refrigerator. However, there are those that are careful to minimize how much they're going to open up the refrigerator, not to leave the refrigerator open more than necessary. So it's not going to change the temperature too much. So it won't, because of the idea of changing the temperature. Halacha Gimel. Now we're going to move on to speak about a different labor, forbidden labor. This forbidden labor is cooking on Shabbos. It's forbidden to cook on Shabbos. And it's a very important to be careful with it, because a lot of our Shabbos is very much a big part of our Shabbos is having food on Shabbos. So we have to be careful that when we have food on Shabbos, when we have food on Shabbos, there's a lot to discuss about how do we have food on Shabbos in a permissible manner, that we're not cooking on Shabbos. Also, it is forbidden to pour sauce or soup that is hot on a piece of bread or a challah. On a piece of bread or a piece of matzah.
Why?
So the reason why it's forbidden is because this hot soup is going to cause the bread or the matzah to get heated up. And cooking is not only in an oven, when you cook in an oven or in a pan, a pot, and not only cooking in an oven or on a stove or a microwave, all these different ways that we cook, but just causing the food to reach a certain temperature is what's considered cooking according to the laws regarding the laws of Shabbos. So if you're going to if a hot soup is going to be poured on a piece of bread or matzah, and it's going to cause the bread or the matzah to reach a certain heat, the heat of what's called it's called Yatse Ledispai, which that heat is a heat that it's too hot for your hand to remain on that heat. So if there's a pot it's too hot for your hand to hold the pot because of the heat, then it will be forbidden to that's the point that it's forbidden to heat food up on Shabbos, food or drinks, That temperature, according to Reb Moshe Feinstein, is 110 degrees Fahrenheit.
It's not even boiling.
Yeah, it's less than boiling, but it's at that temperature, Reb Moshe Feinstein, that was Reb Moshe Feinstein's ruling. At that temperature, a person doesn't feel comfortable to keep their hand on such a temperature. A person would not keep their hand on such a temperature. So that's why you have to be careful not to pour soup on a piece of bread or a matzah. And this is so with other foods as well. Now, important to mention, matzah and bread, how were they previously made fit for eating? They were previously made fit for eating through baking. So because that they were originally made with baking, and now it's getting heated through cooking. When you pour soup, that's considered, when there's liquid, it's considered being heated through cooking. So that's why it's forbidden to pour soup on bread or matzah. But if you would have food that was originally made fit for eating, not through baking, but through cooking, then it would be permissible to pour something hot on it. So if you had, let's say, a piece of kugel, you had kugel that was already cooked before Shabbos, but now the kugel already cooled down. So if the kugel is if you have a kugel on a piece of plate, let's say, and you're pouring, so if you're going to have the hot water if you're going to have the kugel going into something hot, as long as the kugel, the thing that's hot is not in its, let's say the soup, it's not in the pot that it was heated, that it was cooked in, but it was transferred to a second pot, to a second container, let's say a bowl, then it'll be permissible to put something that was already cooked in it. So but it's specifically if it's if it's already transferred into a second vessel. These laws there's a lot of different details, so we'll see, I'll try to go through as much as we could, and maybe we'll have to summarize at the end or next class. We'll see. Go over. So what are we saying? But if you have soup, if you have hot soup, it's forbidden to pour it on a piece of bread or matzah. Ela yara tfila esareta v'secha kaina v'yiskar ksas actually roi lachilo v'achar achitish shama esalachan oyamatzis. So what should you do? Rather, you should pour first the hot soup into a bowl and let the hot soup cool down until it's fit to be eaten. It's not too hot. And it's until the point that it's less than 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And afterwards you should put into this, then you can put it into the soup. Once it's already cooled down, you can put the bread or the matzah into it. But as long as the soup is still boiling hot, even if it's in a second vessel and it's no longer in the pot that it was cooked in, it's still forbidden to put into it bread or matzahs. And similarly, you should not put salt or spices into your soup, even if your soup's already in a second vessel. It's not in the pot where the soup was cooked, but it's already in a bowl, which is the second vessel. Still you shouldn't put it in. You still shouldn't put salt or spices in the soup. And certainly you shouldn't put the salt or spices into the pot, as long as the soup is still boiling hot. Rather, what should you do? Rather, you have to wait until it cools down that it's no longer 110 degrees.
They're saying below 110 degrees, you can put the salt and spices into the soup?
Yeah.
Okay. That wasn't clear.
Okay. Thanks for asking. So, yeah, if the soup is no longer at the heating point of 110 degrees, then you're able to put other things into it. You can put salt and spices into it because the salt and spices are not going to reach the temperature of being heated up. Now, I just want to discuss a little bit about different vessels. The place, the container, the vessel that the food the food is cooked in, that is the hottest. The food is going to remain hot in that vessel for a long time. Since that the food was cooked in that vessel, let's say a pot, since the food was cooked in a pot, the walls of the pot are also hot. And it's going to cause, since the walls of the pot are hot, it's going to cause the food to contain its heat for a longer period of time. As opposed to when you pour the soup from the pot into a bowl, the bowl doesn't have hot, the walls of the perimeter of the bowl, the walls of the bowl are not hot. They're just regular temperature. So that's going to cause the soup that goes into the bowl to already cool down a little bit and going to cool down much quicker than if the soup is in the pot where it was cooked. So that's the reason, that's the idea that a second vessel, the bowl, as opposed to the pot, the bowl is going to have more lenient than the pot. Here we're saying that even a second vessel, you have to be careful. But there are cases on a second vessel, it is permitted. Like I was mentioning, if something's already cooked, and there's a bowl of soup in a second vessel, you're able to put something that was already cooked into that second vessel. Although the food that is already cooked that's going into the second vessel is right now cold, and through putting it into the soup, it's going to warm it up. Still, it's permitted. And it could even heat it up. Still permitted. Now, then there's something called a third vessel. If you have, you have a pot of soup. If you take from the pot of soup and put it into a bowl, the bowl becomes the second vessel. If you transfer the soup from one bowl into a second bowl, then the second bowl becomes the third vessel. And the law is that if you have that in a third vessel, we're not worried anymore that cooking is going to occur. And therefore, you'll be able to add into the third vessel whatever you want. You can put salt in, spices, challah, matzah, whatever you want, you're able to put into the third vessel. So that's when it's a third vessel. But let's think about it. Let's. So far, everyone's following. Any questions before I go take it a step further? Okay, let's go a step further. When you're taking food out of a pot, when one's taking soup out of a pot, there's a ladle. You use a ladle. Is the ladle already the second vessel, or is the bowl considered the second vessel? Once the soup or any food reaches a third vessel, there's no more concerns about cooking in this vessel. The question is, what's considered the third vessel? Is the ladle considered the second vessel? and now your bowl consider the third vessel, and you won't need a second bowl? Or is the ladle not considered a second vessel? So the answer is, it depends how the ladle is being used. If the ladle doesn't get the heat of the pot, then the ladle is going to be a second vessel. If the ladle is going to get the heat of the pot, it's going to be an extension. It's just going to be an extension of the pot, and it's going to be considered a first vessel, like the pot. It's like the pot. When does the ladle contain the heat of the pot? If the ladle is going to remain in the pot, in the bowl, and let's talk about soup, like we're already speaking about. If a ladle is going to go into the soup pot and remain in the soup pot, then the ladle is going to be the first vessel. And the bowl is only going to be a second vessel, and you need a second bowl. But if you're just using the ladle and right away, you put the ladle into the soup bowl and you just take out soup from the pot, but you don't leave the ladle in the soup bowl. In that case, when you just take out soup with the ladle, that's all what you're using the ladle for, then the ladle is considered the second vessel. Just to make it clear, I'll go say this again. The ladle would be a second vessel if you're just using the ladle to take out soup from the pot. But if the ladle is staying in the pot for a certain amount of time, for more than that, then the ladle is going to be considered the first vessel. So if you're going to, in between serving one person, you serve one person, then you keep the ladle in the soup pot while you're bringing the soup bowl to the table, then that ladle becomes the first vessel. It gets the heat of the pot. And the ladle itself is going to remain hot, and it's going to be considered the first vessel, and you need to transfer the soup into two bowls in order to make it a third vessel. Okay, let's continue inside this halacha. Salt that is made through cooking, yesh makilin. There are those that are lenient. Nowadays, our salt is not in this form. It's not made, and it would be necessary to use a second. It would be you wouldn't be able to put a salt into a second vessel, and so you have to be careful to have your soup in either, as I mentioned with the ladle, that the ladle doesn't remain in the soup bowl. And then you could just put salt in your bowl, and you can't add salt, but you can't add salt to the pot on Shabbos. You have to add to your bowl, and that's only if your first bowl is the third vessel. But if you need a second bowl to make it a third vessel, then you'd have to add in salt or spices into your second bowl. Those that are strict also in this aspect, they receive blessings. And likewise, you're not allowed to pour coffee or tea that is hot into a cup that you want to drink in it, if you have sugar already in the cup. Rather, you have to first pour the coffee, tea, or the tea, and afterwards pour the sugar into the coffee or tea. And if it's necessary, you're able to be lenient. If it's a need, you're able to be lenient. So what's this idea with the coffee and the tea? So we mentioned that the idea is that when you're pouring, the coffee and the tea, when you're pouring from, you want to make sure that the coffee and the tea are not being poured from a vessel that is considered the first vessel, let's say from the urn, from the hot urn, or from, let's say the coffee, you have already made coffee, brewed coffee. So if you're pouring from that vessel onto sugar, then then you're having sugar, then that sugar is being heated up by something that came from the first vessel. And that would be, and that is what we would say is forbidden. But if you first pour the coffee or the tea into a cup, so then when you add the sugar, it's just going into something that's already a second vessel. So then it will be permitted. Okay, well, it's ready for a one walk. Well, and yeah.
So you said that if it were soup in a second vessel, you could not put salt into it, but if it were tea or coffee in a second vessel, you can put sugar into it. Why
So
the
sugar,
contradiction is okay?
I have to look in. I think the sugar is already. Let me look into it. Is it that sugar was already cooked? Let me see. Yeah, since the sugar is already cooked, things that are already cooked, you're able to put into a second vessel.
Oh,
As opposed to salt that wasn't cooked, you're not allowed to put into a second vessel.
okay. I want to pursue I want you to pursue the tea bag issue. I make tea by putting a tea bag into hot water or pouring hot water over a tea bag.
It's not the same.
You're wondering if if it's better to put the tea bag in after you put hot water, or
Well, yeah, they can pick up that also, but I mean, can these things be done in the second vessel?
could you have in a second? Could the tea bag be in? So it's better, from my understanding, it's you should have the hot water.
In the cup first.
Have the hot water in the cup first, yeah, and then put the tea bag in.
Second vessel, you mean?
Yeah,
Yes, in the cup.
Yeah, and you have first hot water in a cup. Not you don't have a tea bag in the cup and then pour the hot water. Rather, the hot water is first in the cup, and afterwards, after the hot water is in the cup, you put the tea bag in.
Even though it may not have been food that was already cooked.
So then we're going to deal with, if it's food that wasn't already cooked, you'll have to put it into a third vessel.
Tea bags
So the
aren't.
hot water.
Tea bags are not cooked in
What?
advance.
So you would have to. So you have to pour you have the water from let's say from the urn. You have to pour water into a cup from the urn. Pour from the urn into a cup, and then from that cup you would have to pour into a different cup. So now your second cup is the third vessel. And once something is in a third vessel, there's no concern of cooking.
Okay.
Then it's permissible to put things into it, and it's not forbidden because of cooking.
I see. So sugar is unique in that it has been cooked. Salt and tea bags are treated differently because they've never been cooked.
Correct.
Okay.
So what you can do,
Okay.
what you can do is you can make what they call tea cents, which is you make a small pot of hot water and the tea bag.